So welcome to Precision Golf and today's fitting. A little bit different today. It's a semi-partial review on the TI 340 mini driver from Callaway and then fitting Matt for it. Now Matt, for those that aren't aware, is a very big hitter, and actually a driver versus 3-wood and where that all fits in the bag is a, this as a club is a very relevant question for you to carry because he hits his driver 350 yards plus. 350 is a miss. His carry distance on a good hit. So actually kind of for Matt this is a highly relevant test, but we're going to start off just talking a little bit about it and what it does. So it's a very limited product. I think it's 500, like with the Triple Diamond Max drivers, 500 in Europe. In total we've got 7 in the 11.5 and 7 in the 13.5. That's all, then there are no more left. So if you are interested in trying this, get in there quick. But titanium. Something they brought back into this club. Why? Obviously we're going to chat about it, but why is that a key thing for this head?
Ultimately, the size of it. Where it's that smaller size, if there wasn't one, you'd see just a massive drop off in performance versus the standard size head. And also just to get the head weight in the right place.
As you can see, kind of head size comparison between the mini driver on this side and then the standard AI Smoke on this side. Footprint wise, it is noticeably different. It's noticeably smaller, and ultimately, in the driver, all the composite and the forged composite in the sole there, composite in the crown, they're taking as much weight out of that centre section as possible to allow them to spread the weight back and get the depth of weighting for forgiveness. If they did that with this head, they'd have to put so much weight at the back. Actually, the balance of the club head relative to the size of it and where the centre of gravity goes is just too extreme. So it's important to actually kind of even off some of that weight progression through the head, which is why in a fairway wood you find metal soles rather than composite. The sole plate in the TaylorMade is a steel, in V steel technology in the fairway woods. So you need that weight low in the head because of centre of gravity positions. So hence the titanium element to it. Some of it also it's 340 cc's versus 460. So it's 25% smaller. That has quite big knock-on effects to how you actually need to hit it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the same as you would with a standard driver where you see so many guys on tour will tee it up high and be hitting 3, 4, 5, 6 up on it. With the mini driver, you are really kind of aiming for something pretty neutral or slightly down onto it, a bit more what we consider an old school move.
Yeah,
a bit more of that squeezy down on it rather than the big hit high loopy draw that you might see someone like Rory hit, for example, with driver. There's a reason he doesn't put this in the bag as much as he's tried it out.
Yeah, and again, something face on, you'll see the different face heights of the two. Shallower head in the mini driver versus the full height on the AI Smoke Max. So that again is also part of the reason for the materials as well. The mini drivers work for someone who's not necessarily great with a driver, and the length of shaft that goes alongside that. That longer shaft promotes that little bit of an upward hit, and you get a lot of players who are better with 3-woods because they're 2.5 inches shorter. So with that tends to come a slightly trappy contact, and that's really where this comes into its own. So
we just remember back to the video we did a few weeks ago, the match play, and I couldn't get that driver anywhere near straight. So I'm quite interested in this little toy.
Yeah, and it's a slight change in angle of attack. A lot of the time the tour players will go to a slightly squeezed shot to hit fairway. So actually, because when you move the swing plane a little bit steeper, the face stays on line a little bit longer. It's easier to maintain face alignment, whereas if you're hitting up and through it, the face rotates a bit more. So actually the volatility of flight, yes, it goes longer, and for you this is not a relevant piece. It's all about hitting fairways. Losing 10, 15, 20 yards from 370 isn't really a big deal, but putting in place.
To be honest,
really
even if it was at 310, I'd be pretty happy because I've got at the moment I carry the driver that comes out once in a blue moon on a hole where I've got 3 fairways to aim at, and then I go down to a 13.5 degree 1-iron that's a 285, 290 club. As long as it's past that. If it's giving me fairway found, I'm taking it because I don't have a safe fairway finder in the bag at the moment at the top.
Because it's always been the debate for you at the top of the bag is driver to fairway wood, and actually what's the relevance of the fairway wood, and we decided ultimately it's short par 4s. Yeah. So actually there's an absolute beast of a driving distance club versus then, okay, is it worth having anything other than that 1-iron in for hitting fairways? doesn't really, it fits in a bit of a no man's land.
Yeah.
So, so this will be very, very interesting to see where we come out with it. So let's crack on, have a play around. And we'll also go into, Matt's able to move his swing plane around and look at different strike points, and whereas the distance Matt will be hitting is not necessarily relevant for all of those watching, what we'll try and do during during this fit is go to relevant points that this works for certain players and swing styles, and try and explain that away as well. So let's get on. Yeah. So start point for the fit today, we've actually spec'd out Matt's current kind of 3-wood spec, even though it's not in the bag at the moment, but Ventus Black 7X. Because the head weight is very, very similar to the 3-wood, the standard length of the club's 43 3/4 inches versus 45 and a half on a driver. So there's much more relevance to this club of setting up as the 3-wood spec as a base point, and then we will explore off there. So we've got the heavyweight forward for Matt as well to start with. That's the lower spin setting. The 11.5 degree head, standard loft. See what he's got.
I mean, immediately I'm trusting this more than the standard size driver, just the length of the shaft and the way it looks down at the ball.
I think that comfort of the shorter length is actually a big part of this club.
Yeah, I mean, when I built my 1-iron, we built it ½ inch short of standard, just because as soon as I got anything longer than that in the bag, it just felt like it was just going to go here, there and everywhere. 3-iron and 1-iron, I think there's only about ¼ inch difference between the two in play, just purely for that fairway finding. So let's see what happens.
Okay, interesting.
Felt maybe a hair low on the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably still a little hitting up on it for what we're aiming for this.
Yeah, and so with the 3 degrees up is generally where a lot of players would aim for with driver at kind of between 1 and 3. But it's interesting, that one, I wonder whether it's, if it's driver, that would have been face angle being open. Actually, that was path being a little bit right. That was the start line. So I expected to see it stay there based on what I'd expect to see from you with driver.
Try and hit down on one a little more.
Yeah, interesting. Very different sound.
That was one I tried to neutralise it out. And
so you've got path, angle of attack, dead flat. You could hear a different note, so you've got to higher up the face, which is one of the key things with this, is that a low hit's still pretty good, but that one, suddenly if I flip between the two numbers, you go between 3,000 spin, we've dropped ½ a degree of launch, but we've dropped 600 revs of spin. So that's, and I think this is the thing with this head. This one, they've gone for it to be a driver performance. It's a driving club, not a fairway tool. I think that's where I've always felt the mini drivers have a bit of a no man's land, in that they're kind of want to make them playable off the ground, but they're teeing off club. But actually, they're replacing a teeing off club.
This very much feels, off those first 2 hits, this very much feels like it's a mini driver. It's not a bigger 3-wood.
Yeah.
It's a driver that they've just shrunk down and therefore added some tech into it to make it still fly.
But I think that's where they failed, because they've not been as long as they should be off the tee to make them playable off the ground, and then you kind of it's almost like they've tried to make them too versatile rather than go, no, this is a driving club. Because the fairway wood, the smaller footprint on the fairway wood, is always going to collect the ball better off the ground. Yeah. So let's not mess about with that.
Yeah, no matter how much down you hit on a fairway wood, this is not going to work as well as a fairway
centre of
wood.
gravity sits too high on the head.
Yeah. Right, let's give it one more blast.
Okay. Yeah, so same angle of attack. Yeah, good. It's a really solid sounding head, actually. That addition of the titanium versus the composite gives it that little bit more of a pop sound off the face.
It feels great, and it sounds great stood over it.
Strong numbers. So, I mean, this shouldn't be too far off based on we know what your 3-wood spec is.
It feels a little, personally swinging it feels a little lost. I kind of get to the top and I'm not quite sure where it's going. I know path number is pretty consistent there.
Yeah.
Kind of all 3 have been around that 2 number, but it's kind of, as I pull down on it, I just feel like I could quite quickly lose it underneath.
Okay. So from that meaning you want a bit more natural feel of the club head.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those that haven't seen Matt before, any of the fittings, that Matt is uber sensitive to head weight. So where he's got a lot of power and a lot of speed and a lot of strength, the moment that club drops underneath, it flips. So there's a very narrow window for balance to fit within for this chap. So what we're gonna do, I like, the dead weight's very close. I'm just gonna put the balance a little bit down the bottom of the shaft, just to naturally bring out the bottom third of the club rather than just using head weight. Because I think with this one, get it dropping in just a little bit more.
Yeah, it just feels like I've got to force it to find it rather than just find its natural slot.
Yeah. Right. Let's find something a little more tip balanced. So what Matt means by that is you want the club to naturally find its way through. If it's too light, the momentum doesn't take you through and then you're left having to find contact. So the effort Matt's talking about is that finding strike point rather than using the mass of the club to take it through. So we've got to push the balance down the shaft just a little bit more. I don't need to go crazy with it because I know how sensitive he is to balance points. So let's shift it a little bit more. But we need to keep stability in the shaft as well, so I don't want to lose the structural rigidity in the shaft. I'm going to go that Motori, the Fujiko, the Motori F1 is designed for a lower spin, but it puts the balance a little nearer the bottom end of the shaft. Right.
Doesn't feel too different swing weight wise. Maybe a fraction.
Yeah. I mean, the Ventus has got a bit of balance in the bottom end, so it's not. I guess it's not that far we can go, but I didn't want to go overly exaggerated. Not first one. There's plenty of time for exaggeration. Okay.
A bit low on the face, it was a bit louder in noise. Maybe just spin it a fraction.
Yeah, I think the interesting of these is going to be where that face to path goes. I think that was the noticeable thing with the Ventus's path was a couple into out, but the face to path started to go, and I guess for you, the more confident you get with it, the more that's going to...
Ultimately, I'm going to swing it harder as I start to trust it more, and at which point that's right hand takes over, and then I start to see left. So why I say it just felt like it wasn't kind of naturally there, and I had to try and find it, but then for me, that just means right hand wants to lead.
Yeah, that's definitely less. There's less closure on that through the ball. Like that's just hung just a hair open. Interesting, a little bit more spin. Was strike point a little lower on the face? Or
Still
was that
felt
solid?
a little low, but it doesn't feel like it's quite as... This is the difficult balance, is it doesn't feel like it's quite as easy to get to the bottom of the ball.
Right, yeah.
It just feels like it wants to get out of the shot a bit quicker. Doesn't feel like I can trap into it.
Because it's dropping under a little bit more.
Yeah,
and then,
it just feels like it's a little too far.
What Matt's trying to say is he wants just like a mixture of the two shafts.
Yeah, can you just make me a special
cake
one?
and eat it. Just standard golfer,
Yeah, because that's me trying to then squeeze it.
Okay.
And then I just
you've
lose
got
it.
Handle ahead because you forced it down onto it.
Yeah, then I just
again,
lose
got
it.
the angle of attack down. So from a head point of view, straight away angle of attack down, strike higher at the face, even face open, spin stayed really stable. Okay, let's see if we can find a middle ground for you there. In terms of total weight, does the dead weight feel
Feels
good?
fine. Yeah, dead weight feels pretty good there. It feels like I can feel it. I just can't release it down. I have to release it out. But I think that's just because the weight is too far down the
A little too far down, yeah. So I mean, so as you say, sensitive, beast from a speed point, sensitive creature. it's whether we try and go back to more of the balance on this, but go a couple of grams heavier.
Yeah.
I think that's worth it, rather than using balance in the bottom end of the shaft to create that drop, whether a little bit more weight just helps to keep it with you. So let's try that.
I think a lot of people might be surprised that you're not doing fitting yourself. Is there a sense of being objective? Is it helpful to have other eyes on it?
Always helpful. So as much as I can stand here and feel certain things and look at the TrackMan data and go, okay, well this one works, this one doesn't. There's certain things about how the club moves in the golf swing that you simply cannot feel, and you have to have someone looking on. Okay, I could have a camera set up there and watching every swing back, but it still doesn't quite give the same reflection as having a second set of eyes, physically looking at how every part of the body moves. So any of the guys will say the same thing. Whenever they're looking at equipment for themselves, we always ask one of the others to watch over and basically be the fitter for it, so that we get a second set of eyes that sees it from the outside, that has no internal opinion as to what should I be playing. They're a complete blank canvas of this is the best thing, objectively the best thing for you.
That makes a lot of sense. And do you typically kind of agree? Is there any debate between the two of you?
There's occasionally the odd, I guess, feel debate every so often, in terms of I may feel something works quite nicely and actually Simon could stand there and go, no, but it puts you in a weird place where you could have a very bad shot start to appear. And then we have that conversation of, well, how often does it happen? We might test for a slightly longer period with that product, hit 10, 12, 15 shots with it and just see, do we start to see that pattern? And ultimately, it's just a case of trying to agree between the two of us. And I'm always going to stand here and be happy to listen to the other person, because ultimately they're the one watching it. As much as I can stand here and go, I want to play a certain product, I want to play a certain shaft. If it doesn't work because the numbers say it doesn't work and the flight says it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting bit of, for us as fitters fitting one another, is that we all know the principles of what we kind of like the idea of, but Matt and I would say myself are very, very fine-tuned on feel of where the club is and what the release pattern feels like. So I rely heavily on his feedback, partly the speed it's all happening. I rely very heavily on his feedback of, okay, that's where it feels like it puts me, and he's very good at verbalizing that. For me to then go, okay, right, so in this instance we go on Tensei Pro, 1K Pro Blue, 80, so we just tipped the dead weight just over 80 grams, so we've gone 5 grams heavier, 82 grams versus 77. It's not quite as tip balanced, so we're using mass rather than balance point. So I can say, right, I can shift very, very slightly this parameter. He'll be able to tell me what it feels like, but I say then just really pulling the two bits together, of saying, right, if it feels that and it looks this way, is there somewhere we can go to try and get the best of both worlds, or actually is a case of, will one override, and can you trust something if you know it's performing versus a feel? But normally the feel and performance will align at some point. Yeah.
Hopefully.
But we're not expecting anyone in the bay in a fitting to have the same level of description as what Matt can. That's from a lot of shots hitting different options and knowing what it does to our actions, and but that's why we can then look at a swing and say, right, I know I've changed this parameter, I can see that in the swing, right, I know why that is. So
right, let's give this a blast. So immediately pickup feels heavier. Just that initial takeaway, it feels like there's more
just
club
in
there.
the handle end, doesn't it?
But hey, it's not the worst thing.
Interesting, yeah.
Interesting.
I know what I saw, but I'm interested to see whether that ties in. So
It felt like as soon as I got to the top, as I put any force in the handle, the club just went flat on me, and then I was just trying to save it.
Yeah, so
And
through
it
the
got
ball, that
toey
looked to me like it got that recovered under.
Yeah, it was a big drop, stop, and
Yeah.
I'll give it one more, but I think that might answer our question about dead weight. But we did the same thing when we looked at my driver. It was the exact same thing. We did that last year. That's up on the YouTube channel. I think that was last year. We looked at driver, and it was the same thing. As soon as we went over a certain limit, every single one was stuck underneath. Flip it to recover and hope it goes straight. So it's interesting that it still does that with this one as well.
Yeah, you can always see you waiting for it, and we're now into the, okay, you've squared the numbers up, but there's not the flow through the ball. So
I don't
with the better
like
weight,
it.
with the better weight, everything's arriving together, so you get that extension down the line rather than.
Yeah, that for me is a. I think that would join the driver in the graveyard of not used.
We're not going above 80 grams. It's like, for me, with driver, I can't go above 65.
Yeah.
64 to 65 grams. It sounds stupidly small window, but I know if I go to 66, it gets behind and I end up stalling out with my body and flipping at it. So exactly the same for you with the fairway wood here, but we can't go above 78, 79 grams. So, right, back to the shaft wall. Now it is, we know it's going to be quite hard to beat that Ventus as a spec. We know it's very close. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to say, right, we know that's a very, very stable baseline. Can we improve it slightly? So I'm going to, I know I don't want to shift the balance too high up because he'll just lose the bottom end. So, hence looking at, something like the Ventus, the TR, the blue, the handle stability would deal with the load Matt puts on it, but we put little tabs on here to remind ourselves as much as anyone else, the fitters, where balance points go, and the balance point, because of the weave in the butt section, moves up. So I know for him that means you kind of flip the head at it, so I'm not going anywhere near that one. But we've got to keep that stability in the tip and the balance kind of lower half. So let me see, where do I want to go with this? Got to keep that tip stability, don't want to throw the balance too far down the bottom. It's actually, it's a very narrow weight window, so we've got a couple of grams to play with in weight, so it's going to drop it down a fraction. 77. Just brain wearing, trying to make sure I pick the right option out. So it's going to go into the Devotion series. So still a fairly stable tip section, but just a fractional change in dead weight versus the Ventus Black. So very much a case of making sure we're not going too heavy on this. So just trying to find the bottom out. So 77 on this, 75 on. Sorry, 77 on the Ventus, 75 on this one. Devotion been great shaft for a long period of time. So slightly lighter in the shaft, but a little bit more balance in the tip. I'm just going to take a fraction of the extra head weight off there. It's the Tour Reserve finish, which they added in a couple of years back. Little nice addition, little prettier finish.
Simon, can I just ask, when you go over there to the shaft wall, do you remember everything on that wall? Is there an element of trying to find things as you go?
Sometimes I just need a visual cue of the shaft to remind me of it. So in terms of remembering every single shaft that's up there and going, oh, I'm going to pick that one, you do sometimes need those visual cues just to go, yeah, that's a good option, or yes, no. So it's hard with the amount of options out there. It is hard to effectively kind of filter through everything and go pull out the 3 or 4 and go, right, those are them mentally. But yeah, the visual cues are the bit that helps me. So I'll look at it and then occasionally I'll know the base shafts I kind of like the idea of, and what we've done with making sure that the dead weights are on there, again remembering all that to within a gram, especially when it's as sensitive as Matt is quite tough to remember every single little detail, but the odd little visual cue then pricks the memory, and then out we come with the shaft. So
presumably there's a logic to the way they're ordered, because I'm always amazed any of you can find anything.
We're amazed that some of us can find it based on how with the iron shafts where they get put back sometimes, but they are generally in a brand order, and then within brands either a model/flight order. So within the Ventus we go red, blue, black. So there is generally an order and a flow to it in that respect. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one of those things I've always. It's something I always had to keep my mind on top of when I was out in the bay fitting as much as I was, whereas maybe I've stepped back from it a little more now, is where we constantly had new product coming out, a new product going on the wall. It's like, right, okay, where is it? One, two, what are the weights of it? Just so then at least, even if I don't know the exact, it's 56 and it's mid to tip section in terms of the feel, at least if I know that shaft is somewhere within that bracket and fits similar to another shaft. If I go to for example, like a UB6, I know where I can then go off the back of that from a weight point of view. I know what sort of 3 or 4 options are out there that are maybe a gram or 2 different, or slightly move that feel profile, just so then I can build myself small little windows, I guess, to just drop people into.
It's kind of capsules, isn't it? It's a bit of saying, right, if we're in this sort of area, right, we've got these to play with. And you say as the new models come through, and even with older models that you might not have used for a while, actually, it's worth, and that's why all the fitters are encouraged to go back and hit product again over and over again. If you get a bit of time, with a shaft that you might not have used much, hit it again. Just remind yourself how that feels and what it does relative to it's like one that we use a lot. I'd say take something like a Ventus as a standard one. It's one that we use a lot. It's one that lots of people want to hit. We're incredibly familiar with what they all do. So use that as a benchmark and hit something else kind of that you might not have used as much, just to remind yourself of what your options are and how they feel, because we're not robots. You do need reminders for certain.
Are you sure?
But for me, the Monday lives are great. The more variety. Yeah. You've seen that hook of mine. For me, the Monday lives where someone says, "Oh, can you hit this?" Actually, it's great because it can help remind me of how something works. So.
Right. This immediately feels a little more comfortable to move around with. Just take away, and whilst you're chatting there, I just took a couple of kind of like light practice swings. It just felt a bit more in time with me.
Yeah.
Famous last words, of course, but famous last words.
Well, you've got the excuse of feeling real. I think where the feels more comfortable is it's not forcing you to have to heave the club away. So when you get anyone who has a rapid acceleration rate, heavy's the worst thing, because once it gets out of sync, it's gone, and then it's a massive compensation that it's sideways. So the lighter weight means you can generate the speed and not get the club behind you, which then brings in big hook, big block. So going back down in weight, that makes sense that would feel more comfortable. It's whether the weight sits a little, to keep the feel of it, whether the weight sits too bottom end.
Okay. You give this one another go. And then there's one I wouldn't mind your opinion on, just from something I've tested in previous 3 woods.
It doesn't look bad. Looks like you've just got to work the head a little bit more.
Yeah,
so
it
there's
feels
a little
like I've got to be a bit more
manipulation
active
to find a square. Certainly earlier on, it looked like you could just carry on going, and there was a little more stability. That looked like your hands had to. Yeah, we're seeing club path drop a little more inside there as well, where it's just the bottom end's dropping under.
So before I put the Ventus Black into the 3 wood, I was toying with the idea of one of the new TPT range.
Okay, yeah.
Just the new updated red range. It just felt, I don't know if it's that single weave, the continuous one weave, it just felt a little more stable, but still responsive enough in the handle that I could tell where the club was going.
Yeah, particularly the single weave, that load through the shaft just becomes very, very even and smooth and very reliable in that respect. So, okay, yeah. I was toying with the heavier weight, I was toying with the idea of one. So I'll go to one that I know isn't over 80 grams. I think my gut feel is, whilst certainly from a flight point of view, in theory, the low would be the way to go. My concern is that's too tip weight.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to stay in the high, which in theory for you means too much flight from a bend profile point of view, but I don't think you'll be able to square the low. So
I can tell you now I won't be able to square the low.
Let's pop that back. So reason for that, with the TPTs, the red ranges, you've got the high and the low in both driver and fairway and hybrid, and the low are more tip stout, but the weight goes noticeably more down the bottom end, which we know for Matt, that gets that dropped underneath. So I want to keep it, there we go, perfect, 77 grams, so matches the Ventus Black weight. The 16 high, so the way that TPT work it is, as you go up in weight, the number goes down. So the 14 is heavier than the 15, is heavier than the 16. So in the high, they go down to 21, which is in the fairway shafts is 56 grams, and the 15 in the low is 87 grams, so there's quite a big progression in weight. But as you go up in weight, structurally they get more and more stable. So there's not necessarily flexes of them, it's that progression in weight and design profile. I always think they have quite an appropriate colour scheme for you.
The red and yellow.
Nature's colour of danger.
Hopefully this won't be a club of danger once we get it correct.
Okay, so we can put that, so balance a little more neutral. It's a gram or so on the head, we can put that back on. We had to take that little bit extra off for the devotion where the swing weight was up at D2.5. So we're back down at D1.5 with that.
Lovely. That is one of the things I find I'm most sensitive to, as much as yes, I'm very particular about what weight I need. For me, as soon as swing weight goes under or over a certain point, I just cannot get close to squaring it. And ultimately for me at 120, it's 120 clubs, but it's always going to be difficult as soon as I get outside of that window I can work with.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's a driver or a fairway wood. If it goes anything over D2 and is anything under D0.5, I'm just a firework display.
I'd say, I mean, you're like me in that there's a little bit of, I rotate the backswing, which you don't. You're more as you transition, the club goes that way, and then the face rolls a little bit, and then you've got to recover it. So, at my acceleration rate, which is a lot less than yours, I find that's where the sensitivity on swing weight comes in, because you've got to time the, I hate the word release, time the squaring of the face. Whereas when you get it right, it's really in a sweet spot. But you can get it wrong very quickly, because if you're too heavy, hangs open, flap it closed, too light, lose it, have to hold it off. Whereas if if the face stays on plane more, you've got a little bit more room to work with. But amplify it to your acceleration profile, and then you've got an incredibly small margin to hit.
So immediately that felt better on the way back.
You say noticeably, for me, it might be hard for the viewer to watch, but noticeably less save coming through the ball.
Yeah, that immediately I got to the top of the backswing, I put the speed in the handle here, and the club went down straight in front of me. It wasn't here and then try and fetch, it was just straight down on the line. It felt like I could actually trust that through the ball. I mean, you can see by face to path being 2.1 shot that I threw the release in thinking I was going to need to try and save it from hitting the previous shaft, which is why I'm never a massive fan of one and done with a shaft. I'll always give someone 2 or 3, because I think if you give them 1, they're still reacting to the previous model.
I mean, there are times where you're pushing the limit so you can see it, but you're at the extremes of what someone
when you're
likely
somewhere
to play.
in the right place from a weighting point of view, and you think you're in the right balance place, I'd always prefer to give someone 2 or 3, even if it's this is wrong. Let me just at least see here's the first one, here's the reaction to the previous shaft. Now this is what they're actually going to give me.
Yeah, first one you can see whether the general move's better, but then always you get, if it is better, the next one's got a bit more commitment to it. It doesn't mean they're hitting it harder, but they trust it and go, there's a little bit more on the swing. And then what looked good on the first one could look horrid on the second one. Yeah, so immediately squarer on the face, ball speed up, quieter on the face to path. That a little bit more flight. I mean, that's where the high versus the Ventus Black, which is very much tip stable, lower launching. There is a little bit of a change in pitch. The spin profile's a little higher with this. That looked very smooth through the ball. Yeah,
it felt very, very easy for me to just kind of rotate the body and the club just track, which is ultimately for me where I'm quite a rotational.
Yeah.
With the body, I just need a club that just follows that line. I don't necessarily mind what the numbers churn out, as long as I know I can produce the same thing every time, and then I can
318 up the middle with a chippy 123 miles an hour.
Let me try and hit down on one at the same speed and see what flight difference we get.
Yes, again, very much treating it like a fairway would rather than a driver in that respect. I think was that a little lower on the face?
A fraction low on strike, so it just spun it up a little.
But club face control, stability of club face. If we're looking at the shot patterns there, slight draw, a little bit squarer, slight draw, the pattern's very repeating, which at the length you're hitting, that knowing the shot shape that's going to come out becomes very, very key. Even if it's got some shot shape, I mean, that's 1.5 degrees face to path, 1.6, and face to target dead square. That's fine because the face is under control. If you're 4 into out and 4 closed, different matter. As
a request for my own preferences, can we open that face up? Can we go a little lower on loft?
Lower loft, yeah, no problem.
I've just always been someone that doesn't like to see a face square or closing with the longer clubs, because I just fear the one that I get it 3 or 4 from the inside and then all of a sudden face is 6 closed and I never see it again.
And for where this is flighting, lofting it down makes sense as well. For someone like Matt, you can also get, we do have the ability to get, for some players, the kind of what they call the tour sleeves, where they're, instead of two notches to loft up and 1 down, and it sits a little bit flatter, but there are 2 notches down and 1 up, so you can open up that face a little bit more if need be. So those are sleeves that we can request from Callaway. Oh, it's low on the head, but I should get away with it. Better visual?
Better visual. It's just low on the head.
Yeah, low on the head, so spun, but face to park and 0.6. So really very, very stable club face. With
Yeah,
this.
I just feel like with this, now whether it's the shaft from a tech point of view or it's just the shaft from a timing point of view, I just feel like I can't mistime the club rotation.
Well, that's a rotten feeling, isn't it?
I know. I know that one's leaked the fraction
for this
right.
sort of club
but
for Matt, we're not necessarily, whereas if we're doing a driver fit, we are trying to say, right, we want control, but we also want to maximise distance. For this, we'll be looking at, right, can we make it a go-to fairway finder at, a solid hit at 315, 320?
if I was stood on the tee box and had that one that's the low miss that everyone would call kind of the rotten one, and it's gone 285 just up the right
A
half.
straight flight up the right centre.
Yeah, I'm taking that all day long.
Mm. A little bit more draw.
Yeah.
But again, it's still face to target's 0.2 of a degree. That's not getting it. It's not getting away from you at all. I think what would be interesting is to pop the Ventus back in.
Yep.
Does it feel? I mean, it looks like you're almost swinging it just smooth.
Yeah.
But is that because you're not? Because it's more in sync, it looks a little more connected. Therefore, it looks quieter.
It feels like I'm not having to do anything to react to what the club's doing. The club's not misbehaving, it's just there.
So essentially the action I'm seeing is simpler because it can be, rather than, it's still one, I say smooth 125. But it just doesn't look like you're working as hard.
No.
But equally speaking, it looks a more controlled swing. It's just whether that is the effort level you're putting in, or it just looks more controlled simply because it's better connected.
I wouldn't say I'm
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm putting less total effort in. I think
Yeah.
it's just timed better,
Yeah.
so it looks a lot less.
It's like any best swings, best setup, best players in sport. You see it's like there's more time because you're not having to save anything.
Right. No, that just feels to me like it's got left on it. Versus the other one, that just feels like it's going over.
Yeah.
It
So it looked like it dropped under a little bit more again. So where balance-wise it's a little bit more on the tip end, path's just gone 4.8. So face to target's still good.
Yeah.
You still align the face back up half a degree open, but the path is 4.8 into out. So it's dropped under, recovered it.
Yeah, as soon as I put the force into that, it just felt like it just very much club just got parallel, which is not what we're hunting for.
It's a slightly more even balance profile on the TPT. Yeah, what this one has, I mean, this is certainly a setup that you can make work.
Yeah,
But
I've
you've
tried
got
there to hit
make
out on that.
work a little bit more. So, the structural strength and stability in the tip and the materials are all great, but you've got to work that little bit harder.
That one I
Right.
can just stand there and swing it.
Right, so we can remove that. I think that's the one bit that as players, okay, we're very sensitive to it, having hit God knows how many setups over the years to know when it just feels simpler. But anyone in the Bay, when the setup's right, it feels easier. It's going to feel a lot cleaner. You're not going to have to do as much to find contact. You can just, point, shoot, and the strike point's more reliable, the face angle's more reliable. So it's not just the remit of players like Matt or scratch players or pros. Actually, the better the setup, the simpler the action is for anybody. So pop that one back up. Now I just want to, we know that TPT is in a really good place. So we're at 77 grams. That's good. We need to be kind of fairly even through. Now, let's see. 72's too light. Kind of mid, lower mid. It's interesting one. This is where the cogs start wearing. I'm going to go into. This has been a very good fairway shot. This is dead weight's in a good place. This is the UB. I think we're going to have to go a long way to beat the TPT shaft, but it's a bit of this is now at the point where we start doing due diligence really within the fit. We've got something that player's happy with. I can see where it's in a good place. It's a case of, okay, let's just double check a couple of other setups just to make absolutely sure, and then we'll go back to that. And if it goes back to being just point shoot, jobs are good, and then we know we're spot on.
Okay. Okay. I tested this in drive. Oh, is this the 7? Okay. Yeah, I tested this in driver in the 6, and it felt very stout. But we did a bit more testing with it and looked at some of the S3 club data, and you start to look at some of the EI curves of shaft within each weight bracket, and the 5 and the 7 are very different to the 6 and the X. The 5 and the 7 are very smooth and very soft in the handle. 6 and the X are just like planks. So when I saw you grab it off the wall, I was intrigued to see which one.
I
assumed it was going to be the 7, but I just wondered if you were
the
going
8
to
just
do
tips it too heavy.
Something just
and so
punky.
the S3 that Matt's talking about, there's the guys at COOLCLUBS who they do a lot of R&D work, and they've got a machine where they test all the different shafts, all the parameters. They're all normalised in terms of the same machine measuring torque, kick points, bend profiles, dead weights. Whereas one brand measuring torque, it can be a different number to another brand measuring torque. So this is all normalised data that we can get access to help us understand the shafts that little bit better.
Don't love the pickup, I'll be honest.
I think he'll find this a bit tip balanced, but we'll see.
No, I've got a smother that.
So I can see. This is one of those, I thought I'd try it just to see. I can see that straight away. The tell for Matt is, it goes, if it gets tip bounced, it goes there, and then he just wraps the toe around on it.
Yeah, I'll give it one more, but I think we're going to see probably the same result.
But again, club path straight away, a little bit more on the inside. So
I think if I try and cut it, it would work, but that's about my lot.
Yeah, but you've got to manage that to keep the face stable. So yes, you've managed it, but that's not reliable on course.
That's a no.
And actually, so sometimes it's worth, even if you think this is on the limit, from a fitting point of view, you've got to, you only know by hitting it. And sometimes what you feel is on the limit is actually good. So I'm actually going to grab that TR Blue 7X. I go on to the TR, it's a bit of a higher balance, and so it's worth just making, again, as we were talking about, it's worth making absolutely sure we're bang on for weight, dead weight, we're bang on for stability from a shaft, in principle. But
so this is Ventus TR Blue 7X. Cool. It's close.
But I can see you can't feel the head on that.
No.
I mean, numbers-wise, that's a great set of numbers from a flight point of view. I can see there's a bit of Zorro going on down the bottom.
I mean, you can see it that club speed dropped. I couldn't commit to it. That, for me, is often my tell. Whenever I'm doing individual testing, whenever I'm looking at something different, and, I will often do a bit of testing myself and then ask one of the other guys to come and get a second opinion on. I might whittle it down to 4 that I think are pretty good. And then I'll get their opinion to see if I'm in the right place. I often find when I can't commit to something and therefore I scrap it out of the choices, my club speed drops 5, 6, 7 mile an hour. Because I just cannot trust that rotation through the ball. And that's normally my tell as to whether or not to keep that one in the loop or just scrap it and say that's just never going to be the answer.
Yeah, so you can see you rein that back. You got it back under, that's where it adapts very quickly. I mean, it's great from a flight point of view.
But I've got to aim left edge.
And it's interesting, heavy for you goes left, light goes right. Because heavy drops under and then you wrap it around. Light kind of gets out in front a little early, then there's a holding off of the club face. So you react to where it gets halfway down, and then, where it gets halfway down, you'll react to and then manipulate the face as you're coming into the ball. It's interesting like that through the ball. For me, it stays out right. You can see it just it doesn't naturally come through. So this is the point where we'll always then go, okay, let's head back into that TPT. You know, we're really nipping around the edges in terms of setup changes. So let's go back to the one that we know is very comfortable. You know, I had to weight the head up a little bit more to get the feel, to get the swing rate up, to get the feel of the club head there with that. And even then, we still lost, you know, natural tracking of the club head through the ball. So let's go back into this.
And as I said at the start, I don't mind if I lose 5 yards versus another option. If I can hit the tight draw and comfortably stand here and just hit the shot, I really don't mind what it is or how far it goes. As long as it goes past 280, 285 for that one iron cover, I don't mind what it is.
Yeah. Right.
Because I'll always say, no matter how far I can hit driver, on most courses in the UK, there's no need for me to have a driver. Because there's no need to hit it 350. There's not enough holes to hit it. Especially with the dispersion of it, there's just no need to hit it. So actually, something like this that I can hit 320, 15 yards either side of the line, it's going to hit 99% of fairways in the UK.
Yeah.
That's the sort of club I want at the top of the bag.
Yeah,
bit low on the head.
Watching it, it's the interesting path a little more into out there, but it still looked simple.
The thing I don't mind about it is, as much as okay, it was a bit into out. That's not trouble.
No, in terms of where that's ended up, it's ended up 21 yards left of centre. That's not, and it's not like it's ripping left into there as well.
And I'm a right half of the fairway aimer anyway with the longest club in the bag. Because I'm always with the longer stuff, I always see it drifting left. In the shorter irons, I might try and hit the cut into the green. But off the tee and the longer shots in, I'm always going to be aiming the right half and let it drift back. So 21 left isn't trouble.
No.
21 right, we start to get into trouble.
A little lower on the face? Yeah.
I tried to squeeze it a little more, but I just didn't quite get to the bottom of the ball. But I mean, immediately club speed's back up above 120.
Yeah, as you say, there's not that same, and it's very fine, but there's not the same manipulation through the ball. It doesn't look like you're having to work club face to deliver it. It's a very, very slight nuance and very small difference. But going back to it, it looks like you're just standing and swinging rather than, with the TI, you could see the kind of steering through the ball, the face manipulation. This does look, everything looks calmer through the ball, or just through the swing as you drop it in. It looks like you and the club are working as a pair rather than it starts to get snipey and quick and snatchy if you've got to manipulate it.
So that last shot there felt a little soft in terms of impact, and shaft felt like it gave a little more. Now that may just be because it was slightly low on the head, but would you go down the route of tipping this because of that, or would you go down the route of going to something a little firmer? Because obviously if you speak to TPT, they would say, well, based on CPM, you'd go into the 15 high because it's a firmer shaft by design, but then you're pushing weight up 4 or 5.
The weight then goes up, certainly, it's certainly an option. For sure, that just to tighten up that bottom end, we are saying with this, it does spin a little bit more. It is the higher flight design shaft is designed to have a little bit more give. I think that's the thing for this club. If we were looking to max out distance, then you might go, okay, we would rather keep the spin a little bit lower. Can we get away with something like the Ventus structure from a dispersion point of view? And we're trying to get away a bit more with that side. I think for this, we'd be looking at, right, let's do what we can to minimise spin with this setup. Yeah, you can tighten up the tip a little bit more. If you're shortening the tip, firms it up. That's just going to hang on a little bit tighter. That as a low strikes 305. Clean hit 324. That's in that distance window that you want to see it. So I think we can hold the spin down a little bit more with how the shaft's prepped in this instance. Because I think with how simple that swing looks, I wouldn't want to lose that based on what you're trying to achieve with this club.
Then I guess the follow-up question to that is, how would that change how the club feels? Would it change swing weight? Would it change how it loads if we then, obviously without actually tipping it, we don't know the true answer to that. But what would we expect
I think
to
you're
see?
not overly tipping it, and I think that's the thing, is you're not going to scythe 2.5 inches off it. So I think it's, you'd look at an inch max. I think in this instance, we're not looking to do too much with it. We're just trying to shore it up a fraction more. So it's because of the even nature of that shaft. It's not a heavily, the balance point isn't exaggerated, so it's got less. There's less shift going on. So yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that one of just tightening the tip up a little bit.
Okay. Let's give it one more. That was low on the head. I fell out of that shot a little bit. That's the bad one that goes right. So I'd be interested. Yeah, that says it all for me as to what, as to the answer in terms of what shaft we need.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that with the TR and, to be honest, with the old 3-wood when it had the Ventus Black in it, I always felt if I, what I would say, fell out of it, so I kind of get stuck on my heels a little bit more.
Yeah.
I lose it right, drifting.
Well,
it
and
starts
that moves
right.
you back and opens the face up.
Yeah, it drifts right and really goes off right. So to see that drift back over is, for me, from a confidence point of view, is so good to see.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why I wouldn't go searching for. Yes, we can. We can use the lower lofted sleeve. We can get the -2 sleeve. Drop the loft a little bit more. Like that one, for example, it's 9 launch, but it's peaking at 120 feet.
Yeah.
We're not worried about it getting too low. So we can control spin that way. We can make the face sit that little bit, nice little bit open for you. You can dial it in with even the D setting to square it back off a bit if it gets too open with the -2. So there are options on that front, and a little bit of tipping on the shaft. But I think the repeatability of this is particularly for the focus for you of this club. That's why I'd stay in that shaft.
Let me have one last swing. If I get another result like that, I think this is the answer, isn't it?
Vincent at TBT is getting an email if this goes well.
I just tried to go after one. If I had like free range,
Stay
just
right
hit it.
a little.
Yeah.
Point 2 on, it's square on the face, so it's path, not face.
That was me just trying to go, if I have free range, just hit it.
Yeah.
Where do we end up? And actually, I know I said I don't want to see it go right. I would only do that if I had 3 fairways to aim at, so I really don't mind those numbers at all.
And curve on that is 8 yards.
Yeah.
Which at 320 is a pretty good percentage. But the face to path 0.2. So yes, the path's into out. But that's the kind of thing, is you build up a bit of trust with it. If you know that happens, you aim straighter when you hit that swing, rather than for the one that draws back in. But that backs up. Okay, hit up a little bit more. That backs up the lower loft. The sleeve that takes that loft down a little bit more, which brings us down to 2-wood flight versus a very, very neutral 3-wood spin. So, yeah. So, I mean, that gives you quite a lot of insight into how we go about the fittings, and say the kind of I guess terminology and language that we would internally be thinking about during sessions with anyone in the bay, but just that we can sort of nerd out and start talking about when we're doing sessions between ourselves. I think from a head point of view, what this gives anyone who's not confident with the driver is the ability to get a driver performance from a flight point of view out of something you can build at 3-wood level, rather than having to go a tiny club head and then actually kind of looking and going, there's not a lot to hit. That actually hits a sweet spot for both of those.
Yeah, it feels like a great combination of, they've got it right this time. It's a driver flight at 3-wood and 2-wood, old school 2-wood size. It's a really nice, confidence inspiring, good performing product. So I think I'll be having one for the golf bag.
Yeah, and whilst some of the spins look high, this has to be the one caveat to that relative to where we'd normally want to get for driver. This is for this chap, they're high, and at those speeds, that's not high on spin, like 4,500 high on spin.
Yeah, I don't mind anything 2,500 to 3,000. It's always nice for me. 2,500 to 3,000 is a good number.
Yeah, and certainly, say for me with this, it's 2,500. It's down at basically driver spin. So for more for more kind of moderate club speeds, this is definitely a head that's going to get spin down. I think again, a bit like the Triple Diamond Max. I think there's this, and how this performs, I think we might see this be a little bit more regular in the line. Or from a fitting point of view, I hope so, because I think it gives a lot of players a really good option.
Yeah.
So, So hope you've enjoyed watching. As I say, there are loads of other videos on the site, on the channel. So have a watch of those, subscribe, like, do all the kind of the nice things like hitting bell buttons, and let us know what content you want to see as well.
If there's anything else you want the freak show here to test out and go through, by all means, just let us know. If you've got any questions for me, just fire them down in there, and we'll get back to them when we can.
Thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys.